Welcome to a bonus episode of
Another one.
There's Your Problem. Second one recording today because we fucking suck at doing bonus episodes.
We are genuinely pretty sorry for this.
Yeah. Our subject today is Geodude.
That's
he
right.
He is strong. He is real. He is our friend.
And the friend of President Obama.
This is true. Yes.
Where was Geodude the night of the morning of September 11th?
Where he was trying to stop the terrorists.
Oh, poor martyred Geodude. Peace upon his soul.
I think it was in poor taste for Geodudes to do the Mark Wahlberg thing of being like, yo, if I'd been on those planes, it would have been a different story.
But it literally would have.
Well, yeah, Geodude would have been there.
He was the only survivor of Flight 93. He lived on account of being a rock.
No, he survived Flight 11, clutching two of the hijackers' passports as he fell to VC Street.
Did you see the person? While we're just I'm airing my grievances. This was actually a fun one. Someone on Twitter was like, "There's no way. Well, there's your problem. Isn't an op, right?" Like, three smart people should know that there were definitely explosives in the World Trade Center. And I was like, normally we just get called like mean names or something. This was actually funny.
Well, yeah, because they figured out we're an op.
There were explosives in the World Trade Center. Those explosives were in the form of large amounts of aircraft parts striking structural steel beams and then being set on fire. And most of the damage we have a whole episode on this. Go away. All right. So, no, we're talking about geoengineering today. And geoengineering is a subject I've wanted to cover for a while because I think it's very funny.
It's when you dig in like the dirt, right?
No. You're thinking of geotechnical engineering, and a lot of people, when I said geoengineering, they thought I meant geotechnical engineering. Geotechnical engineering is soil science, which I don't know enough to talk about. And honestly, I don't think anyone does because most of that science has not been really fully fleshed out until like the 1980s, right?
Arcane magic.
It is, honestly. It's more of an art than a science. And, you know, if you say that in a geotechnical engineering class, they'll get mad at you. But, you know, I think factually it is kind of it's a very complex subject, but what we're going to talk about is geoengineering, right? Geoengineering is trying to reverse climate change using engineering.
Oh, right? Hell yes.
We're trying to use the raw power of science to reverse climate change rather than alter our personal habits or, you know, so on and so forth, right?
I like this already. Better living through technology. I can roll coal so long as I'm driving with a trailer that sucks the coal back out of the air.
You can have a chemical romance.
When I was a young boy, my father took me to see a marching band.
All right. So I think we need to start this bonus episode by talking about we're going to use the Socratic method, which is what is nature, right?
No. It's like a profusion of forms and forms of forms.
Yes. There's like nature is like something which is there's sort of a very, very much a definition of it in popular culture, which is, you know, nature is somewhere that's untouched by, you know, humans. Nature is like animals. It's like trees. It's like, you know, all this kind of crap, right?
It's outside. It's
outside is the nature. Yeah.
Yeah. It's what you're supposed to go to when you log off.
Yes. You go and you touch the grass, right? You go and you touch the grass. You see the tree. You see like a sparrow and a squirrel. Maybe like, I don't know. Those are the two animals I usually see. Sometimes I see like a gray cat bird if I'm lucky.
Yeah, but you could see any number of things. You could see this cool moose. You could
see a moose,
a fish.
You could see this fish.
Sometimes a bear.
Here's the desert. That's nature. Here's a glacier. Here's a swamp. Here's the Appalachian Mountains. Oh wait, what am I seeing here? That's farms. This is a natural landscape which has been sculpted by man. Right?
Shit.
Fuck. Yes. And that's one of the things about a lot of nature is we've had a huge amount of influence over it over time. to the point where, what we consider nature now is not necessarily that natural, right?
Sure.
Especially in like places that have been inhabited by industrial civilization for a long, long time. I'm concentrated industrial civilization. I'm talking about Europe mostly there, right?
All of the beautiful bare mountains of the Scottish Highlands that are just deforested.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to ask another question: is nature good? Is there a good to nature, right?
I don't know.
For most of human history, nature has been bad. Our opinion towards nature has been that nature is bad, right?
Yeah.
Nature was annoying. It was full of animals that could kill you. There were like lions in like Germany that were just eating people. It was fucking shit, right?
Even when you develop an animist belief system where you're like, this rock is spiritually important and has like a soul or whatever, it's still something that is dangerous and has to be respected and placated.
Exactly. We see evidence of this, going back to the Bible, right? Isaiah chapter 40, verse 4, every valley shall be exalted and every mountain and hill shall be made low. The crooked shall be made straight. The rough places plain. That people were pissed off at nature. They just wanted a flat radial plain they could farm on. Right.
Yeah, that was clearly written by a guy who had done a lot of walking in sandals.
Yes.
Yeah, he'd done a lot of walking in sandals. He had a farm
both ways.
He had a farm. He was digging boulders out with a plow. He was really, really pissed off. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So ancient people thought nature was a pain in the ass, as did a lot of medieval people. Right. Attitudes towards this don't really change until sort of the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and we get the beginning of some of these literary philosophical movements like romanticism, transcendentalism, stuff like that. You got Henry David Thoreau and Walden, stuff like that. And then it's like some kind of romantic sort of idea of nature that develops.
Once you have enough like reliable heat, light, and waterproofing, then because people are perverse little monkeys, some of us go, actually, it's good to be outside where the rain and the cold and the dark
are. I'm gonna go to this pond that's just outside of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna talk about how fucking romantic nature it is. While I also get my mom to come out there to do my laundry. Right?
Take your rugged individualism and shove it up your ass.
Exactly. So romanticism is a thing sort of in the early 19th century, early to mid 19th century, but it's eventually replaced by modernism. Right. And modernism as a philosophy says basically, technology can and will solve problems and improve human lives. Man can bend nature to his will.
Yeah. As opposed to the sort of medieval view, which is God has given us this stuff to conquer and bend to our will.
Yeah.
It's specifically we have to do this with technology rather than...
We are going to do this with technology.
Mm-hmm.
And to a large extent, we did it too. Nature, has a set of resources that can be exploited as man sees fit. And for a while, this works really well. This is the Croton Dam, which was one of the earlier dams that supplies New York City with water. I say modernism philosophically, not like modernist architecture, right? Mm-hmm. Because this is obviously there's some classical influences on the dam itself. Architecture always lags behind the philosophy. But this is a thoroughly modernist structure in that it's a large dam that retains water for a plumbing system that goes several hundred feet underground and then pops back up in the largest city in the United States, right? Mm-hmm. And they did that in like 1870 something.
It's beautiful.
It's an incredible structure. I mean, the whole New York City water system is incredible. I also saw some pictures of this right after Hurricane Ida, and this was just water just everywhere.
So what hath God wrought? What did we do with this modernism?
Ruined everything.
Well, Well, modernism, I think, is not the whole of the problem, but humans change nature dramatically, and we started doing this well before the modernist period, right? And there's obvious things like agriculture, right? Dams, locks, cities, stuff like that. And you have sort of less obvious things where you alter the climate in an uncontrolled and non-deliberate way, right? I think
Sure.
a good example of this is the Columbian Exchange, right? So, Columbian Exchange, of course, the colonists arrived in North America. One of the things they had was smallpox, right? And now there's an extent to which smallpox spread naturally. There was also an extent to which smallpox was deliberately spread to Native Americans by colonists, right? But the smallpox sort of ripped through native populations sort of in advance of the actual spread of European colonizers throughout North America, right?
Mhm.
Sort of wipes whole civilizations off the map. Their agriculture collapsed, right? Native trees and plants took over the former fields where they had previously been growing, the three sisters, right? Your squash, your beans, your maize. As these fields were overtaken by nature, new plants sucked CO2 out of the atmosphere, right? This led to a prolonged period of global cooling we now call the Little Ice Age. This is at least one theory as to why it happened.
Interesting.
I think another interesting caveat to that is some people theorize that the Black Death is actually what started the Little Ice Age, and that was compounded because after the Black Death happened, the Mississippian civilization, which was sort of around St. Louis, collapsed because of several failed harvests, and then that compounded the problem, right? Hey, it's Justin in post-production. Just dropping in to clarify something I explained in a confusing way. So one theory about the disappearance of the Mississippian culture is that owing to reduced agricultural production in Europe because of the Black Plague, native plants overtook those fields and those sucked CO2 out of the atmosphere. And the resulting global cooling affected harvests around the world, including the Mississippians, who suffered a devastating civilizational collapse as a result. This is one theory of many, of course. We don't know exactly what happened there.
Yeah, and nobody actually knows for certain. Plus, a lot of American populations had just collapsed pre-contact anyway, and nobody really knows why.
The Pueblo Indians collapsed really early on, and they had a very advanced civilization. But yeah, you have these huge swaths of the earth are completely, have been for a very long time, sculpted by man. You have like the Jefferson Grid. If you're in the United States, you go out west, you notice everything's 1 square mile blocks. That was something that didn't arise naturally.
Oh,
right?
No.
It was one of our first large scale attempts at changing the climate, right? The logic being, well, Europe is cultivated and Europe has rain.
Sure.
Therefore,
all right.
rain follows the plow. Right? And as it turned out, well, actually, no. Once you get past the 100th meridian, you can't actually cultivate crops without irrigation, right? You start implementing policies to try and get people to settle west of the 100th meridian with the idea that, well, if we cultivate enough land, it will start raining. The heavens will just open, right? And we do that with railroad land grants. We do this with Indian relocation. We do this with the Homestead Act. It didn't work, right? It clearly was not going to work. But we were trying to change the climate to suit our needs.
Man plans and God laughs.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
By doing a drought is how.
And yeah, sort of in this vein, the extent to which the humans have altered the Earth and the biosphere, it's difficult to imagine. If you go to Europe, you see a picturesque landscape. It's artificial. It's human creation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in especially Pennsylvania is a good example. You see some forests in Pennsylvania. Those are entirely new growth because the whole state was cultivated, as of like 1920 something. And actually, a lot of our current forest land is former farmland that was laid fallow. Massachusetts is also like that. Actual honest to God wilderness, very difficult to find. You got Amazon rainforest,
Well, not anymore.
Yeah, the Canadian Shield, like the Kamchatka Peninsula or the Sahara Desert. These are most places that can sustain agriculture have been farmed at this point, and most places that humans can inhabit are inhabited by humans. We're at sort of this end state where the wilderness that exists because
we've made it back into wilderness. Yeah,
the land is not good.
Right.
Yeah. With that being said, we live in a thoroughly modernist world, right? And one of the effects of this is, of course, we've created this incredible externality called carbon emissions, right? Right. So you're killing the planet.
Yeah, I've heard of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought it was no big deal.
It's whatever.
We don't deserve to survive as a species anyway.
So, we're in the middle of this sort of mass extinction event. We're losing biodiversity. We have lots of pollution. We have ecosystems collapsing. We have agriculture, which is largely unsustainable without the huge amounts of petrochemicals we can throw at it, right? And we got microplastics. We got all this crap. We've made some significant progress.
The freaking frogs gay, etc., etc.
We're turning the frogs gay. Yeah, we've got some progress was made on pollution in the 60s and 70s through the EPA, especially the specific criteria pollutants. We've been doing very good on those, but CO2 has not been addressed. CO2 is a difficult one, right? Because CO2, carbon dioxide, it's a greenhouse gas, right? And I think we all know this. It builds up in the atmosphere. Planet gets hotter, traps more heat in the atmosphere, right? Warms it up. It's also more difficult to address than a lot of other pollutants because sort of the basic activity of combustion produces CO2 by definition, right? This is a chemical which you can't, easily exclude from any combustion process, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, as CO2 builds up and melts the polar ice caps, it does all this crap, right? It makes the ocean more acidic, which is a fun one, which means all kinds of the little tiny protists that make up the base of the food chain that can't survive, right? Everyone knows about this stuff.
We start to get sort of unexpected and perverse feedback loops where we have massive jumps in emissions from things that have knock-on effects for other things. We get a sort of like a thermal runaway almost, which is just fantastic to think about.
Yeah, and this is something, of course, we're trying to address through clean energy, right? I'm going to be honest. I've become a little more optimistic about this problem than I used to be.
Why is that?
If you sort of look at the breakdown of greenhouse gas emissions, which we're seeing on the screen here, we see transportation, electricity, industry, commercial and residential buildings, agriculture. You look at transportation, most of this is cars, right? Electricity, most of this is coal and natural gas, right? Industry is actually mostly just natural gas, which is burned because it's more convenient than doing a process electrically. Commercial and residential, this is also natural gas mostly. And then agriculture is cows farting. If you can make renewable energy cheaper than using natural gas directly, I think a lot of these emissions disappear pretty quickly, right? But our big issue is we're doing this not through some kind of command economy. We're doing it through the market, right?
Right.
Which means
we're just never going to do it.
We'll get to net zero. We'll just do it in 2050 rather than, a couple years from now, which is when it needs to happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Climate Stalin or nothing.
Exactly, right? We're we're doing this much too slowly to sort of think about avoiding the worst effects of climate change. We're going to see all kinds of horrible, nasty things happen, like just constantly for the rest of our lives, right?
Mm-hmm. Which is great for us, even if we, survive all of them, just for in terms of our sort of general well-being. I know I'm feeling great about it.
You get your sort of crack in your ping,
Mm-hmm.
So, and this may be assisted by maybe a couple global catastrophes. Like some people think we hit peak oil in the pandemic, which may or may not be true, which would hopefully, sort of assist in this drawdown on the carbon economy. But it would be
it's not let me say, how do I say this? It's not killing the people who need to be killed.
Well, yes. I mean, we have these wonderful cheap renewables now, and they've come too late is the issue, right?
Okay.
So anyway, we're heading towards this sort of climate catastrophe, right? And we're not doing anything to mitigate it, or we are doing things to mitigate it, but too slowly. We have a question: can we mitigate these problems using modernism?
Ooh.
Right? And the answer is maybe. Through a process called geoengineering.
What if we fuck with nature even more?
Yes. So there's lots of different kinds of geoengineering, right? Geoengineering is using engineering to affect the climate in desirable ways, right? There's a few categories of geoengineering, but most of it fits in either solar geoengineering or carbon dioxide removal, right?
And carbon capture is the one that we kind of bet everything on in theory. Like every climate target requires the future development urgently of very efficient carbon capture, in order for us to ever meet it.
You suddenly invent some kind of incredible carbon capture machine that will be economically viable. We'll get to that in a bit. But solar geoengineering is the less complicated one, generally speaking, right? You block out some percentage of the energy we receive from the sun, right? And temperatures go down. That's nice and easy, right? There's a few ways to achieve this. Some of them are more practical than others, right?
I do favor the big sun shield theory.
Big sun shield. Dyson spheres everywhere.
No, the Dyson sphere would do the reverse.
Didn't the Dyson sphere encapsulate it doesn't it capture the sun?
Yeah, it doesn't capture the sun.
Yeah, to generate energy from it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I
it's
was
like
thinking,
out, it's like out at the orbit of like Pluto, though.
Once again, I'll just go fuck myself.
Wait, we would be trapped within the Dyson sphere? Suddenly I'm feeling quite claustrophobic now.
You have to be inside the Dyson sphere in order to have sunlight.
Would we fuck? We're gonna have to put like a door in it or something if we ever want to get out of the solar system.
Nice bay window.
Have you ever watched Spaceballs?
No, never.
Yeah, with the planet that has the big door, that the big airlock. Anyway, all right. So
that's the most disciplined I think I've ever heard him sound.
Well, I'm sorry.
Don't worry about
it. This is you're insulting Jewish culture by not watching Spaceballs.
And they say there's no anti-Semitism on the left.
He deleted that, by the way.
Good.
That one went quick. I wonder why.
All right. So
now that we're done having Twitter beefs mid-podcast,
we'll never be done with that.
Yeah, I'm actually going to log into Roz's account today and just start tweeting random people at Engineering Explained. You got small testes. Care to Engineering Explained?
go beef against practical engineering. Nah, he seems like a nice guy.
Plainly difficult to do what? Talk to girls?
No, if we're gonna have a beef with anyone, it's the B1M. I'm watching you.
You're beefing with the Chemical Safety Board.
No, they're good. Chemical Safety Board is good.
CSB, you a CS bitch.
So the simplest way to do solar geoengineering to block out some of the sun is something called aerosol injection, right?
Chemtrails.
Chemtrails. Roz, you have to chant it with us.
So here's the idea.
It's
You
fun.
inject aerosols, tiny particles into the upper atmosphere, right? These particles disperse and they block out a small amount of sunlight, and that in turn lowers global temperatures, right? And you do this through chemicals like sulfur dioxide or sulfuric acid, right? And you
Estradiol, valerate, finasteride, spironolactone.
Oh, we're gonna force feminize the whole planet, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
There have been some ideas of how exactly you inject these aerosols. Some people say you got to do it with a big plane. You do it with a balloon. Some people think you can do it with artillery, which is funny.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, artillery I like chemtrail balloon.
Yeah. And this sort of mimics a natural process of blocking out the sunlight, which volcanoes also do, right? So it'd be like a continuous volcanic eruption all around the world.
All right.
Yeah.
Has anyone considered setting off a shitload of volcanoes?
Safe.
Well, you just drop a nuke into Vesuvius. Yeah, great idea.
Not even that. Just dropping like bundles of dynamite into Old Faithful and Yellowstone and just waiting. Is Old Faithful in Yellowstone or Yosemite? It doesn't matter.
It's Yellowstone. One advantage of this is that it's very cheap comparatively to other ideas, right? It's on the order of like a couple $2 billion a year to do a thorough aerosol injection geoengineering process, right? One rich guy like Jeff Bezos could do it, right?
Fuck yeah, let's do it. Let's go.
There are some potential problems, however.
Don't care. Let's do it.
One of the problems is ozone depletion.
I just said I didn't care what the problems were.
You may have some ozone depletion. That's debated.
Okay, fine. Run it. I don't care.
Change the color of the sky.
Cool. Based. Awesome.
That's
Let's
sick.
do it. Change it to what?
Yeah, exactly. I have questions.
White? Cool.
Yeah. You might get a little bit of acid rain.
Okay.
We already had that problem.
We already have that problem, yeah. We don't know exactly what all the effects would be, right?
Well, when's that ever stopped us before?
This is true, yeah. Another problem with aerosol injection is once you start, you can't stop, right? The aerosols are fairly short-lived, so you have to figure out how to actually reduce emissions and remove CO2 from the atmosphere while you're doing this whole process, right? If you stop doing aerosol injection, global temperatures just shoot up like over a year.
Like more than normal?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, you get a rubber band effect, yeah. That's probably the one we're going to do. I'm convinced we're going to do this at some point. I think, we're just going to do this one. It's going to be stupid. We're going to do it in the stupidest way possible. But there are some other ideas.
Looking forward to white skies and a job flying a balloon around the upper atmosphere.
You could become a balloonist.
Actually, I want the artillery job. Right? If they let me wear a weird uniform,
nice jaunty cap. Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I want the balloonist job, so I can wear a top.
I already took it. I already said dibs. No,
you're stuck with the plane.
Sorry.
No. I'm gonna do the balloon because I want to wear the top hat.
I want to wear the top hat. I wanted the balloon. You should have called dibs first.
Funny mustache too.
You already have a funny mustache.
So here's another idea for solar geoengineering, right?
Oh boy.
The
idea is you block the sun.
Yes.
Mr. Burns has entered the chat.
Block the sun. Block the sun.
This is more permanent than aerosols, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
You can
blocking the sun, not super well known for being a reversible process.
So there's several ways you can do this, ranging from large terrestrial sunshades to like big mirrors on satellites, right? Essentially, you throw enough large mirrors in orbit to block a predictable amount of sunlight everywhere.
Well, that's going to be a problem with the fucking Kessler syndrome.
You gotta just figure out how to schedule all these satellites. If we just had some agency monitoring all the satellites, this would not be a problem. But we live in this fucking capitalist bullshit where we can't schedule anything.
Just in time satellite scheduling.
Basically.
Another idea, which was put forward by a physicist and science fiction author named Gregory Benford, would be to put a 1,000 kilometer diagonal Fresnel lens at the L1 Lagrange point, right? The Fresnel lens is the one that, it's sort of segmented so it doesn't use so much material, right? And the Lagrange point is, there's several Lagrange points. These are points where a small body will be in sort of gravitational equilibrium between the sun and the earth. It will sort of stay in that same point. There's 5 of them. There's
I hate when I have to fucking go out into the Lagrange point and fucking clean off the giant Fresnel lens with a fucking cloth.
It's fucking giant.
You like that one,
I put the cloth on a pole like window cleaners use. I put it in front of the Fresnel lens. It is instantly vaporized. I grab another pole.
I was thinking, isn't this just a Futurama episode with the pile of trash or something? No, some of these are literally Futurama bits.
We installed it backwards. We got more sunlight on the earth. Shit. But the idea is you put this giant Fresnel lens at the number 1 Lagrange point, which is the one directly between the sun and the earth, such that 1% of the sun's light is redirected away from the earth, right?
Yeah, and into a killing beam.
Yes. Welcome to Dark Earth.
A killing beam around the earth, though, also protects us from aliens.
That's true.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm into this one.
So how exactly you get this thing there, I don't know, or how you manufacture it.
You'd have to manufacture it in orbit, right? You'd have to.
I think you probably have to, yeah. And, but the author believes it can be done for under $10 billion. So, that might be cheaper than aerosol injection, assuming he is right, which he is not.
Oh.
So another kind of solar geoengineering, which I think is, the simplest and easiest one to understand, is to move the Earth.
These get better and better, man. I'm yeah, fuck it. Okay. Just back it up a little bit. Yeah.
Just back it up. Yeah.
There's an astronaut giving us hand signals. Like back. You're
trying to do the Philly thing. You're trying to you're
back
trying to
door,
back.
asshole.
No, you back it up and just until it hits Mars, just a little bit, and then you bring it forward until it hits Jupiter, and then you find something in the middle. No, so one way to reduce the amount and energy of sunlight that hits the Earth is to move it to a higher orbit, right? And this is relatively easy to achieve, right? Assuming you have a lot of time.
Which we don't.
You find some big asteroids, 100-kilometer diameter asteroids. You strap some boosters on them, and you slingshot them around the Earth and Jupiter a few times. Jupiter is a great way to get some extra gravity on you, right?
Von Neumann transfers, or whatever they're called. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And each time you shove the Earth a little bit farther out, right? There's a couple risks associated with this, though.
Yeah, I'll say. Fucking playing interstellar pool with
exactly
with asteroids. I've seen the movie Melancholia, and I don't like how it ends. I don't want that to happen.
One of the risks is you might get one of the asteroid transfers wrong, and it hits the Earth and kills everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That would be pretty bad.
At this point, on this day,
I cast my vote against this. I would prefer this not happen.
Another issue is that if you do this too aggressively, you might lose the moon.
I mean, that's also a problem with smaller asteroids because the moon is like throwing itself in front of a bullet like a Secret Service agent for us several thousand times a day.
Yes. Another issue is this process will, with current technology, take a very, very long time, right? Which we don't have to solve climate change, right? But the other thing is the sun is only getting brighter until it goes red giant. So we have to do this at some point.
I mean, this is presumably on an astronomical time scale, so
right.
I think he could do it in about 2,000 years.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah.
How long do we have until the sun gets appreciably brighter?
I think it's like a couple million years.
No, well,
yeah.
No rush then.
Though we do have to do it eventually. That's the thing.
Or we could move with. I think by that point we're supposed to be on other planets, right?
Well, yeah, but there'll be some kind of Earth conservation committee who's going to move it out.
Oh, fucking yeah! The entire population of Earth is National Park Service rangers.
It's all a historic district. Yeah.
Yeah. I get the Earth tour.
So that's solar geoengineering, right?
Hmm.
There's another type of geoengineering that solves a different problem. I think solves it more effectively, which is carbon dioxide removal.
Getting the big suck. This is the thing that we, like every climate pledge, assumes that we will invent.
Well, we will invent some really practical carbon dioxide removal just out of nowhere, right?
I mean, there already is a form of carbon dioxide removal that works that we're going to talk about on the next slide. But instead, we're going to develop a machine that looks kind of like an Xbox or something. And we're going to stack a bunch of them together, and it's going to suck all the carbon dioxide out. And then the thing is, we're going to have like waste carbon dioxide that we're just going to have to sequester somewhere.
Yeah, because carbon dioxide is not like a chemical that is, particularly useful for like fuel or anything. It's not useful for anything.
Carbonated soda.
Carbonated soda, carbonated beer, extracting
animals,
oil.
Packaging, but like even then, it's like as we've seen in Britain, it's one of those things where your entire country collapses if you don't have any, but you only need a little bit.
Yes. So the biggest problem with solar geoengineering is it doesn't solve the other problems about CO2 in the atmosphere, right? It may prevent sea levels from rising, but it doesn't prevent CO2 from doing other things. Like if you have high concentrations of CO2, like you might see in, say, a school, it makes you dumb and sleepy.
Oh yeah, my little pet theory, just to give everybody something more to be paranoid about, is that CO2 causes sort of like less noticeable, less measurable cognitive decline at far lower concentrations than previously realized, and we're all getting slightly dumber all the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the other thing is around 1,200 to 2,000 parts per million, which you frequently see in school buildings, even new ones. It does appreciably make you dumber and sleepier. Now we're about 400 parts per million ambient right now. So, we got a little bit to go. But another issue with CO2 in the atmosphere is something called ocean acidification, right? So if you imagine the ocean is a big keg of beer, right? But it's flat beer.
Ooh.
Beer is flat. What you do to carbonate that beer is you add CO2 under pressure, right? And over the course of like 12 hours, the beer becomes carbonated from the ambient pressure of the CO2.
What if I prefer a naturally carbonated beer? Like it's got yeast in there.
Oh, well, then you put the yeast in there and then it ferments and then you trap the CO2. And sort of the same process, honestly, except the CO2 comes from the yeast. And
we
got
to invent reverse yeast.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Oh, no.
So, essentially, like as ambient CO2 in the atmosphere increases, the CO2 migrates into the ocean and makes it more acidic. It creates carbonic acid, right? You're essentially carbonating the ocean, right? And this is something that disrupts some of the lowest parts of the food chain, right? Your little tiny protists and your tiny shellfish, all these sort of little teeny tiny itty bitty marine organisms. They rely on a ocean with a specific acidity in order to create their tiny shells, right? And if there's enough carbonic acid in there, also known as carbonation, those shells disintegrate and the little tiny organisms also disintegrate that can't live, right?
Oh, fuck, that's depressing.
Yeah. So, this is, and once you have the little tiny organisms at the bottom of the food chain start to disintegrate, then, things higher on the food chain start to have problems because there's nothing to eat, right? In the most extreme situation, you wind up with an ocean that's almost exclusively made of jellyfish. Right.
Ugh, I hate jellyfish.
Don't
scare
love
the shit
that.
out of me. No, it scares the
Yeah,
shit out
but
of me.
at least you have fewer fish, which is also the good, Liam.
True. So who's to say?
Well, this also eventually causes issues for animals on land. Incredibly.
Yeah, I'm afraid you hate the fish, but you need the fish.
Yes, I understand.
Fish,
I understand.
Yes. And you need fish other than jellyfish. So actually removing CO2 from the atmosphere would be a good way to combat climate change if you could do it at scale. And there's some theories as to how you could do that.
This is the most effective carbon capture technology yet devised.
Yeah, it's called a tree.
Wait, what's a tree?
A tree it's like made of wood. It has leaves.
Trees. This is why I never leave Philly.
Yeah.
Trees everywhere. Trees.
So, one of the ideas is you can just plant a lot of trees, and that's going to combat climate change. I believe there's been a bunch of data that just came out recently about the largest tree planting program in the world, which is in India.
Yes,
which they planted like a couple trillion trees or something like that, and they all died.
Oh,
well, that's inspiring.
It turns out if you plant a whole bunch of trees in places where there weren't previously trees, there's a reason why there weren't previously trees there. So the other option is you plant trees in places where there are trees, and then when the trees reach maturity, what you do is you cut down the trees and you put the trees in a hole, right?
Okay.
An open hole or like a covered hole?
Oh, no, you put it in like a bunker underground, right?
Oh, okay.
What?
Yeah. And this sequesters the carbon that the tree absorbed over its lifetime underground. Now, you do have some issues here, which is the tree might start rotting, right? Which would release the carbon from the tree as it rots. So you need some kind of sterile environment and some way to enforce that, right? Which is why I think the obvious answer here is you put the trees in with some nuclear waste.
This is not a place of honor. Nothing important or valued is stored here apart from a shitload of trees.
Yeah, please feed me a tree every day.
I hunger.
It's a nuclear waste disposal facility with a one-way tree valve.
We alternate a spent waste cask and a giant sequoia. So this would require you to store a ludicrous amount of trees underground. I don't know what it is offhand, but it is a lot. But it is one idea, right?
In the trillions, presumably.
Oh, it's a lot of fucking trees, yeah. And those trees are, have you seen lumber prices recently? All this shit is expensive. Speaking of expensive, we have direct carbon capture, right? You got your CO2 atmospheric extraction machines. There's been a number of prototypes built of these, right? This is sort of
fucking better be, because that's the thing we've put the marker down on so far.
Yeah, and we haven't done very well at it.
Any day now.
This is like your basic dumb guy idea is like, well, what if we took a machine to take the carbon out of the atmosphere, right? So here's an example of one. I believe this is one of the largest ever built. but it's
That's not very large.
it's not very large. Yeah. Well, so you suck the CO2 out of the atmosphere. It's very expensive. It's very inefficient. It leaves you with a bunch of CO2 that you have to do something with, right? And it's much more expensive than sort of normal CO2 extraction from hydrocarbons, which is how you do industrial carbon dioxide otherwise, right? So commercial reuse is difficult. So the best idea people have had to do something with the CO2 is to just inject it underground, right?
Where so we're not doing Mr. Sucky's vacuum experience?
Oh, isn't injecting a bunch of chemicals into the ground how we get things like flaming tap water and like massive earthquakes and shit?
Don't worry about that.
This would be CO2 tap water.
Oh, good.
It's fizzy.
Like, by this point, it's more plausible to just be like, yeah, the way we sequester it is the government gives you a big square pressure vessel full of CO2 and you just have to keep it in your apartment.
All right, this is your CO2 child. His name is Steve.
Yeah, like one town that agreed to take on the first big CO2 capture project. And like, we're proud to announce we have the world's first sparkling tap water system. So if you inject the CO2 underground and you have the right geological formations, the CO2 essentially turns into a rock, right? But another idea, which has been employed in Alberta, I believe, is to take the captured CO2 and inject it underground in order to extract oil.
Thank you, Canadian Texas.
Yes. It's the circle of life right there, right? And this is the one that this is the technology the oil companies really like, because they're like, well, we can continue extracting oil if we just come up with carbon capture.
Yeah, it feels the most nefarious.
Yes, but it's a very impractical technology. This is, I believe, the largest CO2 sequestration machine in the world. It's in Iceland. Actually, this may not be the same one because this looks too lush to be Iceland. But the largest one was just turned on a couple days ago, which can offset the emissions of 820 cars.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible.
And when you say offset, for how long?
As long as it's running.
820 cars per year.
Per year. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Fuck
that's
me.
Bad.
Jesus.
Yeah, so turning the machine on is the equivalent to turning off 820 cars.
Okay,
right?
Great. So all we need is, I don't know, 6 billion of those machines in the next 10 years.
Why don't we make the whole
planet
out of the carbon capture machine? Yeah, no, fuck it. Climate Stalin. Stalin. If you every time you touch the door handle of a car, a guy from the NKVD fucking shoots you.
It's not a bad idea, Alice. It's got that sweet anarchist endorsement.
Yeah, just no more cars, just blanket, just overnight. If you touch a car, you fucking die.
All right, at this point, I'm on board. Sorry, GTI.
Well, I mean, it's worth noting, I think, that, you look at one of these machines, these gigantic, expensive machines that offset the emissions of 820 cars. You could achieve that also by, like, painting a bike lane.
Yeah.
You could put a bike lane on a busy street. You could get the same amount of emission reductions.
Oh, you can't induce people to bike, Roz.
Yeah, I can with this gun.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Learn to fucking bike, I say, chambering around with this fucking Makarov.
You get one of those like bikes with the machine gun on it,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Climate Stalin.
Mm-hmm.
Stalin's a good one.
Crucially, not related to historical Stalin, but rather taking the sort of like mid-war Stalinist approach of having realized that accommodation with the Nazis is impossible. We now devote everything to it as national priority number one of like radically restructuring our entire deal to do this one thing of survival.
Well, should do that. Stalin is a complex figure.
That's true. And no one understands him like his woman.
Yes. So one of the things is I haven't been able to read, I haven't seen in the articles is like, okay, it's offsetting the emissions of 820 cars. We got to also understand like a concept of embodied carbon, which is, they used carbon to make the steel, to make the machine, stuff like that. I wonder what
it's got like a lead time. Yeah, exactly.
They're intended to run exclusively off clean energy, which means you have to build, the windmills or the solar panels,
more steel,
more
cement,
the nuclear power plant or something like that in order to run them, right? And this is a whole. I am very skeptical of this technology, is what I'm saying.
I mean, maybe we will see truly like fucking logarithmic growth and efficiency, but I fucking doubt it, man.
I mean, if you actually started to, look at this problem as being, we need to make clean electricity as cheap as possible, as quickly as possible, right? To the point where large industrial processes like steel mills, like cement plants, like other things that need really high heat, move to electric heating elements, that some of this embodied carbon stuff wouldn't be as big of a problem. But it doesn't seem like that's the way stuff is going.
No, because ironically, the fucking natural gas industry trying to sell gas as a bridging fuel, as an alternative to coal.
Yeah. The natural gas is definitely they're trying to say this is going to be the thing. And the annoying thing is, if you look at like emissions in especially the northeast of the United States, where a lot of natural gas capacity was installed to replace coal and the rest was nuclear power, the statistics show it's working, but. But you're also stuck on this natural gas, and now they're trying to retire the nuclear power in favor of the natural gas. And you're putting in some renewables, but not enough, and not as quickly as you need to.
Shit's backwards.
It's all ass backwards. Yeah. So anyway, another idea is something called ocean fertilization, right? So here's what you do.
This sounds crazy. Let me hear it.
As you're acidifying the ocean, there's more CO2 dissolved in the ocean, right? But some parts of the ocean are deficient in nutrients, right? If you have a lot of CO2 and a lot of nutrients, you get something called an algae bloom, right? Where you got a bunch of algae and phytoplanktons and little protist guys. They come up and they start growing really rapidly. They suck out all the CO2. They replace it with oxygen, right?
Yeah, you can see these sometimes from boats.
Yes. And when they run out of CO2, they all die and they fall to the ocean floor, and the carbon falls to the ocean floor with them, right? So one idea is you artificially fertilize large swaths of the ocean to create algae blooms, right? And they suck CO2 out of the ocean, which also sucks it out of the atmosphere, right? The best way to do it was with a whole bunch of tiny iron filings, right? I'm not specifically certain of the biological processes involved here, but it works, apparently.
Ocean chemtrails.
Yes. And this has been tried in practice several times, actually. And the number one thing that unites all those ocean fertilization trials is that they were done extremely unscientifically and without permission.
The cops can't stop you from throwing hundreds of tons of iron filings into the ocean if you outrun them.
Yes, exactly.
That's the damn truth.
It's a really slow speed chase, 11 knots.
Yeah, there's a Coast Guard cutter behind me. You keep telling me to stop throwing iron filings. I'm just like, no.
Can you prove I had any iron filings aboard? I don't have any iron filings aboard.
What do you mean my boat is stuck in place to the iron filings?
Just using those fucking like Greenpeace water cannons, but like to fire iron filings into the ocean.
You're just shooting ferrofluid. You're directing with a magnet. You look like some kind of supervillain.
Hell yeah. Okay, that's the job I want if I can't get climate artillery woman.
So there was an incident, I believe in 2012, where the Haida Salmon Restoration Corporation dumped 100 tons of iron into the ocean off the coast of Haida Gwaii, which is in northern Pacific Canada. It's the island just north of the big island just north of Vancouver Island, right? The idea being they would grow a huge algae bloom, which would be feedstock for the salmon, and also they could sell carbon offsets off of it, right?
Mm.
They did this without permission, and everyone got really mad at them. But you know what happened? Salmon stocks quadrupled the next year.
Funny how
Hell
it
yeah,
works.
I'm sold. Let's do it.
Yeah, hard save,
Yeah.
actually.
Correlation is not causation.
Shut up, Roz.
Don't care.
Shut up, dweeb.
Disrespect the Canadian Coast Guard. Throw iron filings into all bodies of water you find.
We're going to save the planet whether you want it or not. As I dump hundreds of tons of iron filings overboard.
Just
I mean,
stealing,
ideally, what you
just
do is
ripping beams out of buildings and dumping them in the ocean.
you combine this with the chemtrails, right? And you have a balloon or a plane that is simultaneously dumping chemicals into the air and the water.
That's efficiency.
I believe that's how Snowpiercer happened.
I'm not seeing a downside here.
I also am not seeing a downside.
Cool train.
Yeah. Very cool on account of it being freezing everywhere. Anyway, so that's carbon dioxide capture. Now, there's another type of geoengineering which I thought we'd include, which I don't think gets as much press as it should, which is the idea of digging a big hole.
Okay, I'm very into this, but let me just say in defense of the Snowpiercer method, right? If it gets too cold, all we gotta do, burn a shitload more fucking shit to generate more carbon emissions. All we have to do is like encourage all of the MAGA guys. All we have to do is like go on TV and be like, we'd be so owned and triggered if you rolled coal even more than you were currently doing.
I believe on a long enough timeline, we are actually heading for another ice age, but it's a couple thousand years out.
Damn.
Yeah. So we do at some point have to raise the temperature of the Earth. Keep this in mind in order to keep it stable.
Well,
so
that's 4022's problem.
Exactly, right? So one method of containing sea level rise, I think a lot of people focus on sea level rise with regard to climate change. And, I think I have a solution here. Is what if we just dug a big hole and put the excess seawater in there, right?
Incredible.
All right.
Yes.
I see we're showing hole.
Yeah.
What we've got to do is demolish the state of California, excavate it, and then we all have seafront property in Arizona Bay.
Yeah. So I think we should do that to New Jersey as well. So, but I think one thing we should do to explain the big hole and show that maybe this is a practical idea, we should talk about some similarly scaled projects throughout history, right? So I want to talk about some continent scale water resource management projects.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. Starting out with Atlantropa.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I think all these projects we're about to look at could be episodes in and of themselves. So Atlantropa, right? It's the 1920s and you're in Germany. And your German architect, Hermann Sorgel, right? And he sorts of sees what's coming, right? The Nazi party was going to fight Europe, right? Or he came up with this idea slightly before the Nazi party came to power, right? Or starting to come to power. But he was also afraid the communists would come to power, which was obviously worse, right?
The fucking libs.
The fucking libs. He proposes a sort of pan-European project to alleviate some of the crises of capitalism occurring in Europe, namely by colonizing Africa more than they already were.
Of course.
Right? Yeah, right.
But doing it by way of very large public works, right?
Oh, like the Suez Canal, but more.
Oh, a lot more. Yeah.
Or doing Cape Town to Cairo, but for water.
Yes, in a way. So the core of the Atlantropa project was to construct a giant hydroelectric dam across the Strait of Gibraltar between Spain and Morocco, right?
Okay.
And subsequently lower the Mediterranean Sea by 200 meters.
Okay, this is me playing fucking Cities Skylines fucking around with dams.
This would create some extra arable land in Europe and Africa. Could be used to control the salinity of the Mediterranean Sea. You have a freshwater Mediterranean Sea over time.
It's time for Big Sicily.
Yes, Big Sicily. Well, there's also going to be a smaller dam off the coast of Sicily to lower the basin east of Sicily even more. Well, they're also going to construct a few other large dams, most significantly in Africa, right? On the Congo River around Lake Chad, right? Lake Chad today is rather small, but if you dammed up the basin, it would return to its prehistoric state as Lake Mega Chad, right? That is the academic term they refer to the old Lake Chad as.
Incredible.
Yes.
Expands the size of Lake Chad, refuses to elaborate, leaves.
And they would use this extra fresh water to irrigate the Sahara, right? And Hermann Sorgel thought of everything, including like protecting historic monuments like Venice. He was going to surround Venice with the world's largest infinity pool.
What?
World's first and largest infinity pool. And so this is something maybe a theme as we look at other water resource projects of this scale. People in Northern Europe really liked this project. They thought it was a great idea. And everyone in Southern Europe and Africa fucking hated it.
All of the people in their nice like Riviera villas don't want to be 200 miles inland. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. This is sort of briefly popular in Weimar Germany, but when the Nazis took power, they decided it'd be cheaper to invade Poland. Right?
Fuckers.
After the war, it gained popularity again. Hermann Sorgel was still alive. And it was like, okay, how are we going to supply electricity to a growing Europe? Atlantropa seems like the way to do it, right? And then practical commercial nuclear power happened. So, they were like, we'd just do this, just use the atom, right? And the project died again. The Atlantropa Institute survived until like 1960 when Hermann Sorgel was out cycling and got hit by a car and died.
That
was the end of Atlantropa.
Fucking paradox game alternate history vibes here, though.
Yes. I mean, the main thing, one of the main aspects of this project was that Europeans would more thoroughly colonize Northern Africa, right? Mm-hmm. That was absolutely part of the project. This is not like a project for the good of humanity. This is a project for fucking Italians to go to Libya and set up gabagool shops.
Yeah, I mean, like Lake Giga Chad would have displaced millions of people.
Millions of people. Yeah, I mean, admittedly, you would have a arable Sahara Desert, maybe, although that would have had knock-on effects to the Amazon rainforest. Hey, this is Justin in post-production again, just dropping in to say the reason that irrigating the Sahara might affect the Amazon is because the Amazon rainforest is in fact fertilized by a constant stream of dust from the Sahara that drifts in over the Atlantic Ocean. So, if you irrigate it, you're not going to get that dust. That can cause some problems. It's a global system, this climate stuff. Anyway.
Never trust Germans with maps.
Yes. So anyway.
Once they start painting the maps in different colors, you got to get the fuck out. No, absolutely not.
Let's look at a Georgian with a map.
Oh, no.
Oh, boy.
Another continent-scale water management project was Stalin's great plan for the transformation of nature.
Yeah, we're out of climate Stalin and into regressible actual Stalin.
All right. So some of these ideas were okay. So the Soviet Union undertook or tried to undertake several massive waterworks projects in its existence. Most of them were sort of started off by Stalin, and a lot of them were to alleviate, Dust Bowl like conditions in a lot of Soviet agricultural regions. Right? And
Yeah, that poster says "Victory over drought."
Yes. You can see there's plans for constructing windbreaks, like forests, right? And there was like a huge campaign to popularize windbreaks amongst, the recently collectivized farms. Like, hey, you gotta plant these trees, you gotta have these windbreaks, you're gonna have better arable land, right? But there were also big irrigation projects, right? Especially in Central Asia. And as they irrigated farmland in Central Asia, you can see here's the Aral Sea. I think this is from the 80s when it was already like pretty much smaller than it was. And I think this is in like 2012 or so. You may notice there's a lot less water.
Yeah, not good.
Mm-hmm.
What you need is to dig out the big hole there.
Well, that would be an option. Yeah. I mean, you'd have a lot of, there is a question as to whether the big hole should be freshwater or saltwater. I lean towards a freshwater big hole because you can use that water for a lot of stuff. Now, there were a couple like big canal projects like the Moscow Canal, the Volga-Don Canal, other stuff like that, especially in the European side of Russia and the Soviet Union.
All built with forced labor, but who's counting?
They also had sort of an issue where they were a little the little smaller than they should have been. They were the draft of a vessel you can get through these canals isn't very good. They're not very wide. They weren't actually very practical for shipping. They are very popular with tourists now, though. The biggest problem project the Soviet Union attempted to undertake were some of the Northern River reversal projects, right?
Oh, hell yes.
Yes. So there are a lot of rivers in Siberia, right? Because Siberia gets a fair amount of rain sometimes, right? And they sort of flow north, right, to the Arctic Ocean, and they flow away from any arable land because these are all, Siberia is all like 2 inches of topsoil and then rock, right?
Mm-hmm.
One idea they had is if you could reverse some of these rivers and have them flow south into Central Asia, into more arable parts of the Soviet Union, right? And then you could start farming. You would have a large amount of fresh water, that you would otherwise not be able to use and which would otherwise flow, as Soviet climatologists said, they would flow uselessly into the Arctic Ocean.
Question: how the fuck do you reverse the flow of a river?
Dams.
Big ones.
Lots of dams.
Huh.
I mean, the United States did it in Chicago. So you're looking at like massive waterworks to get this done. And this was a project. This was one of the only aspects of the plan for the transformation in nature that was pursued after Stalin died, because it seemed like a great idea. As we got into the 80s and a lot of the engineering work had been done, there were a lot of questions about, oh my God, is this going to, they thought it might make the climate colder because you wouldn't have the warm water flowing into the Arctic Ocean. The increased salinity would make some of the ice melt despite it being colder. It was like a huge, no one knew exactly what was going to happen. And of course, Reagan was in the meantime bankrupting the Soviet Union. So, in 1986, after all the engineering work had been done, after the plans had been devised, the project was canceled.
Cowards.
Yeah.
Should have done it. Fucked around.
Should have just done it. Yeah, I think it would have. We'd live in a more interesting world if they had fucked around, seeing what happened.
Even true of the Germans,
Another nice continent scale water management project is the North American Water and Power Alliance.
Nawapa.
The NWAPA, yeah.
Nawapa.
So this is, but in the U.S., this is like the big kahuna. There are people who still think we should do this today.
Should we still do this today?
I have mixed opinions. All right. So this is your peak of modernist ideology about the environment, right? And it came very close to actually happening. So in the 1960s, water consumption in America, but especially in California, was growing exponentially, right? And something had to be done. They had already constructed massive waterworks in California. I understand you're supposed to read the book Cadillac Desert about that. I haven't read it though. They had drained several arable valleys in order to provide water to Los Angeles, for instance. They had created these huge reservoirs. The West in general, though, was still lacking in water. And the water consumption they have was rapidly hitting a barrier, right?
Yeah. See the documentary Chinatown for more on this.
Yes. And in the general vicinity of the West Coast were several useless rivers, right?
Mm-hmm. This is hurtful to call a river that.
Okay. Listen, I'm a modernist right now. I'm not saying this in my capacity as a modern person. I'm saying this as a 1960s coked up engineer guy. So among them were the Fraser River, the Yukon River, the Peace River, and the Laird River, right? The Fraser flows down to Vancouver through the Rocky Mountain Trench. The Yukon flows north to Alaska. I'm not sure where the Peace and the Laird are, but they're also flow through the Yukon northward, right? And they flow to largely non-arable regions. They're flowing through this land, which is, again, it's like an inch of topsoil and then bedrock, right? You can't use it for agriculture. So the Parsons Corporation in Pasadena, California, saw this and thought, well, what if we just took these rivers and rerouted them to where the water was needed? And they came up with this thing called the North American Water and Power Alliance, right? And the big project here was a massive, I think, 1,300-foot dam, right, in the Rocky Mountain Trench, that would have created a 500-mile-long reservoir for the rerouted Fraser, Yukon, and Peace rivers, right? This would create a huge amount of hydroelectricity. It would also allow them to redirect a lot of the water to other areas in the United States, right?
You're talking about a dam double the height of Hoover Dam.
Oh, like triple the height.
Shit.
Great.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And much, much longer, too. You're going from one Rocky Mountain ridge to the other Rocky Mountain ridge.
Again, city skyline shit.
Yes. And this water was going to be redirected to several places, right? So some of it was going to go to a transcontinental canal that would have gone all the way from the Rocky Mountains to the Great Lakes, right? Some was going to be pumped to the headwaters of the Missouri River and sort of feed the Mississippi River system, right? And a whole big bunch was going to be pumped over the Rocky Mountains at this spot, which would be the Sawtooth Lifts, right? By gigantic atomic pumping stations.
Hell yes.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah. Let's go.
And it would then flow into several basins in California, but also into the headwaters of the Colorado River. And it would be distributed through several river systems through Southern California. I think there's some branch off to Central California, which isn't shown here. And there was, it would flow down into Mexico. I believe also there was something that went down to Baja, California. allowing agricultural development of all these areas, you would completely change the geography of America with this project, right? You would have much more fresh water supply everywhere, even in the Great Lakes, right? At the cost of fresh water supply in the Yukon and Alaska, right?
Which, how much do you need?
I mean, not a lot of people live there.
Let's do it, baby.
And we've killed off the wildlife there pretty well, regardless. So,
oh yeah,
yeah. This project came really close to happening. The only thing that really stopped it was there was a sudden decrease in water use, or a cease in the increase in water use in Southern California and the Central Valley, which suddenly made this project seem less urgent, right?
Well, that's not going to last. I mean,
well, it's surprising how much you can limit water use when you install water meters.
Even still,
when
I've seen their
have
reservoirs.
Oh yeah, I mean, we may have to do this. The other thing was the Canadians really did not like this project.
Fuck them.
Oh well, fuck them.
Yeah,
yeah. Build the Mega Hoover Dam, or we will release the 4th and 5th blackface pictures. Justin,
I believe there is a whole city called Prince George right about here that would be submerged.
Hate to see it. Sorry.
So the Canadians didn't like it. One of the ideas that Parsons Corporation put forth was, what if we annex Canada?
Yes.
Yeah.
Another thing they put
War
forth
of 1812 round 2, baby.
Listen, you get what you deserve. Another idea put forward through this plan was a lot of the excavating through the big mountains you would do with peaceful atomic explosions.
Sure.
Which is an episode we should do at some point.
It's only fresh water for tilling crops and shit. You don't. What's a little radiation between friends?
Just a little bit of radiation. Look, we're not using enhanced radiation weapons.
Yeah, seasoned to taste.
Exactly. So the Parsons Corporation is still like an engineering firm to this day, and they still like vaguely promote it. There was a modified version of this plan called the Grand Canal, which mostly focused around the waterworks in the east around Hudson's Bay to feed extra water into the Great Lakes. That gained a lot of traction in the 90s. But, this didn't, it got really close to happening and then didn't happen. It was very feasible with the technology of the 60s. Couldn't do it today.
Yeah, people don't like setting off atomic bombs nearly as much. Back then, they loved that shit.
Oh shit, yeah. I mean, it's fucking great. People come out in the town main street and watch the atomic bomb go off. Hell yeah.
Have a themed beauty pageant around it, Miss Atomic Bomb.
Oh hell yeah. So yeah, these are some of our previous big hole style projects. But we have to maybe consider the actual ramifications of digging the big hole, right? So, okay, say you're going to dig a big hole to put the sea level rise in.
Yes.
I lifted this from Jason Ditzian on Medium, who did some calculations, right? So, one of your worst case scenarios, I believe, put forward by NASA was, 8 feet of sea level rise by 2100, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with a sea level surface of 361,740,264 square kilometers of ocean, that's just over 900,000 cubic kilometers of hole you have to dig, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is 38 Lake Baikals or 75 Lake Superiors.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So right here, you're looking in front of you. This is the Bagger 288, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is
great machine being used evilly to dig lignite coal out in Germany.
Exactly, right? One of these Bagger 288s can remove 240,000 cubic meters of overburden daily, which is 0.00024 cubic kilometers.
I see where you're going with this, but tell me the numbers anyway.
So it would take 3,768,129,166 and what's 2/3 of a day?
16 hours?
16 hours of Bagger 288-days to remove that volume of Earth. Now, until 2100, there are about 28,590 days. So in order to dig this hole, we need about 132,000 Bagger 288s.
Yeah, if it takes one guy 10 minutes to dig a hole, then it takes 10 guys 1 minute to dig a hole.
Listen, this is basic. This is relatively. I believe these numbers make sense. Okay. Now, theoretically, another option would be to come up with an excavator bigger than the Bagger 288. Right? We could try that. Another option is you could use nuclear bombs to dig the hole. Another question is, where do you dig the hole? How, are we digging? Are we letting seawater in? Are we creating a big freshwater reservoir, which is what I would do? Where are we putting it? I don't know. This is where I leave it.
Add a fourth Great Lake, Lake Superior.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, but you need 75 of them.
Well, it's one lake. It's just huge. That's why it's Lake Superior. But like,
really,
it's
really, really deep. That would be one option.
Yeah.
That's why Lake Baikal has a smaller surface area, but it's very, very deep. Whereas Lake Superior is comparatively shallow. So this is where I open up to the floor for discussion. Where do we put the big hole, and how do we do it?
North Atlantic.
What? Just like where on the North Atlantic?
I was about to say there's already water there. There's already water there.
Do you want to like lower the sea level?
No, get rid of Australia.
Are we dredging?
Yeah, we're dredging. We're lowering the seafloor. Underwater Bagger 288s.
Well, that's a little bit easier because you can just, use dredging is very much a well-developed technology where you can remove a shitload of earth with just a water pump. So that is an option.
I think now that we have synthetic diamonds, we should expand one of those giant open-cast diamond mines in Siberia.
That's another option, yeah, because a lot of those are really, really big. I think the blog I read mentioned that we would only need about 500,000 of those.
Yeah, perfect.
So, that's this is how we're going to solve sea level rise, although not the other knock-on problems. In fact, I think we could. I think it depends on where you put the big hole. You could maybe get some better precipitation in some parts of the world. I think if you put it in the Sahara Desert, that would not be a bad idea because you get a little bit more rain. Although you would also lose the dust blowing into the Amazon, which is what fertilizes the Amazon. But on the other hand, we're already getting rid of the Amazon, so I don't fucking know.
Personally,
we're gonna have to do something.
Yeah, and I have a solution to this. Next slide, please. We just do climate Stalinism. We do climate Stalinism.
You have to do climate Stalin. Yeah, I mean, that's the only way you can do it.
Listen. Many unimaginable numbers of people are going to die if we do nothing, or in fact, not enough. And so, therefore, we need a leadership style that is like willing and able to accept killing huge numbers of people in a non-eugenics based way, which is the other big fucking alternative on the table, in order to forestall the worst consequence, climate Stalin.
Yeah, exactly. We just need to take all the kulaks and put them to work building the North American Water and Power Alliance.
That's right. That's right.
By which I mean the Canadians.
Listen, I am willing to be cancelled after the communism episode. I am willing to devote my labor to digging the big fucking canal. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be kind of nice if I could just go out and get paid to like do something with a shovel all day. You know,
I'm sure you don't get paid.
Oh well,
You get paid
hey,
in, like you get paid in like unfiltered cigarettes and not being shot.
All right, give me like some beer. Give me like some decent beer for pay. Let me get like an Egyptian deal.
Oh man, I don't know. Maybe we're just fucked, but like also, but like the fucking pessimism is worse, man.
That's true. No, you're right. You're right. We have to do climate stall. I sign on as the anarchist contingent of this podcast. We're going to do climate Stalinism.
Mm. It's like regular Stalinism, except it's good.
Is it?
Look at you! Look at you learning and growing.
There's an extent to which, I mean, yeah, we're gonna experience some of the worst effects of climate change. I'm not the most doomer guy. I did see this video recently on the YouTubes called "Nature Abhors a Dome." It's like this 2-hour episode about accepting how you're going to get fucked by climate change. I think I recommended viewing.
I love to read books titled things like "Accepting Climate Doom" or like "The End of Ice" or shit like that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you just got to understand exactly how the place you live is going to get fucked by climate change and sort of prepare appropriately. You know, I have come to accept that at some point in my life I'm going to be hit by like a gigantic like Category 5 hurricane. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just gotta. I guess I don't know. We're gonna see some weird shit, and that's the best case scenario. But
yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic about like humanity in general. Even if we end up in fucking cloud atlas shit, you know, I think we're gonna be fucking. We're going to adapt to shit because we're good at adapting to shit. The only question is how many people die needlessly in the process of us learning how to do that. And so far, that number's only going up.
Yes.
I try not to be blasé about it, but what else can you fucking do? I mean, they don't let me decide the policy.
Exactly. I'm not the guy who's deciding that we have to like I don't know, just fucking strip mine the third world for lithium because we can't be bothered to put up some damn wires. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not the guy building new coal power plants, and even the guy who's building new coal power plants isn't the guy who's building new coal power plants because somebody fucking told him to. Like,
President Xi has decided no more new coal power plants. It funded, well, not domestically, but internationally by the Chinese. So
that's a good first step, I guess. Mm-hmm. Should have been 25 years ago, but what can you do?
25 years ago. That's your whole reaction to climate change right there.
Yeah. I don't know. The way I feel about it is like you remember the Mystery Science Theater episode with Zap Rousdower, Canadian hero? There's a bit where he like sort of leans back in his double denim and Crow goes, I hope there's beer on the sun. That's kind of how I feel about climate change. I'm just like, yeah, it's going to be, I hope there's still treats. I hope I still get fucking Ferrero Rocher in resettlement population 77 or whatever.
Well, that was a bonus episode.
Yeah, I hope you're fucking happy. We depressed the shit out of you. We recorded 2 bonus episodes back to back, and from now on, we are back on schedule.
Yes,
we got actually behind schedule on regulars.
Shut the fuck up, Liam.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
You paid to see it.
Yeah, tell the Jew to shut up. What a surprise!
Well, congrats on getting on both Islamophobia cow and anti-Semitism cow the same day.
Yeah, just for the record, holy shit, I can talk about anti-Semitism without in any way invoking Israel. When you talk about, oh, well, they're just using it to shield from criticism of Israel, you're bringing that into the conversation.
Fucking
Suck my ass.
Islamophobia captive bolt pistol.
Blow me.
Listen. All right. So I'm calling that was the episode.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.